You've stood over your driver, you've made what felt like a good swing, and you watched that ball leak right anyway, again. Maybe it was a low duck hook the time before. Maybe a weak slice the time before that. Different miss, same feeling. You just can't trust it. Here's what I found. The thing that gets you striping your driver every single time is not a new swing. It's not a new shaft. It's one feeling that a one-legged golfer was teaching almost 100 years ago. And it got quietly buried under decades of lessons built to keep you paying and keep you confused. I traced it back to a man named Ernest Jones and a book printed in 1937. His teaching tool was a penknife tied to a handkerchief. That's it. And I'll show you how to feel the whole thing tonight, in your living room, with the same clubs you already own. I remember the exact moment I got suspicious. I was standing at an estate sale outside of town, flipping through a box of moldy golf books nobody wanted, and one brittle page fell open to a photograph of a man swinging a club on one leg. One leg, and the caption said, "He shot in the 70s. That stopped me cold. Because if a man with one leg could stripe a driver, then everything I'd been told about needing power and perfect positions had to be wrong. So let me back up and show you how the trail started, because it did not start with that book. It started with a single sentence that made no sense to me at all. The sentence was this: swing the club head. 3 words. I'd seen them quoted in an old golf magazine. No author, no context, just those 3 words in bold, like they meant something obvious. But they didn't, because everything modern golf had taught me was the opposite. Shift your hips. Keep your lead arm straight. Get the club to parallel. Shallow the shaft. Feel the lag. I had a head full of positions, and my drives were still all over the map. And that was the contradiction that hooked me. I had more instruction than any golfer in history could have dreamed of. Free videos, launch monitor numbers, frame-by-frame breakdowns. And I was worse off for it. More confused, more tense, more scared of the ball than when I first picked up a club. So who wrote "Swing the Club Head"? And why did those 3 words sound so certain when everything else sounded like a warning label? That question is what sent me digging. And the answer was a man most golfers today have never heard of, which is exactly the problem. Ernest Jones was born in England in 1887, near the old links town of Sandwich. He turned professional young. He was good. Not a legend yet, just a solid working pro with a smooth, easy swing and a low handicap. By his mid-20s, he was the kind of player who could break par without breaking a sweat. Then came the war. In 1916, fighting in France, a grenade took his right leg below the knee. Think about what that means for a golfer. The whole modern story of the golf swing is about the lower body. Drive with your legs, push off the ground, load into your trail side, fire your hips through. Take away a man's leg, and by every rule they teach today, he should never stripe a golf ball again. But here's the part that made me sit up. Within months of losing that leg, before he even had a proper artificial one, Ernest Jones went out and played golf on crutches. On one leg, and he shot an 83. On one leg, balancing on a single foot, he shot a score most weekend golfers with 2 good legs would sign for right now. And it got stranger. Once he was fitted with a wooden leg and could stand more normally, he got back down into the 70s. A man with one real leg, shooting scores that humiliate healthy golfers. Now I want you to sit with that, the way I did, because it is the whole case in one image. If power came from the legs, that score is impossible. If striping the ball came from perfect weight shift and violent hip rotation, that score is impossible. So the power and the accuracy had to be coming from somewhere else entirely. Somewhere everyone had stopped looking. Ernest Jones spent the rest of his life answering that question. He moved to the United States. He taught in New York. And he built his entire method around those 3 words that had confused me so badly. Swing the club head, not swing your body. not hit at the ball. Swing the club head and let everything else follow it. So that closed my first question. A real man, with a real injury, proved you don't need brute strength or a textbook lower body to hit it pure. But it opened a much bigger one. If this was proven back then, by a living, breathing example nobody could argue with, then why on earth had I never heard his name? Why did I grow up believing the exact opposite of what this man demonstrated with one leg? Somebody, somewhere, had let this get lost. And once I started asking who benefited from that, the whole thing got a lot darker. Let me tell you what Ernest Jones actually did with his students, because this is where the penknife comes in, and this is where I finally understood the tweak. He would take an ordinary pocket knife, a small folding jackknife, and tie it to one corner of a handkerchief. Then he'd hold the far corner of the handkerchief between two fingers and let the knife hang down like a little weight on a string, and he would swing it back and through, in a smooth little arc. Here's what he wanted his students to notice. When you swing that weight on the end of the cloth correctly, the cloth stays taut. The weight pulls it tight. It swings on a smooth, wide arc all by itself, and you can feel exactly where the weight is the whole time. But the second you try to force it, the second you jerk it or push it or steer it, the cloth goes slack, the arc collapses, and the whole thing turns into a floppy mess. That, he said, is your golf swing. The club head is the weight. Your arms and the shaft are the cloth, and your only job is to swing the weight so smoothly that it keeps the cloth pulled tight the entire time. When you do that, the club finds its own path. It squares itself up. It delivers itself to the back of the ball with speed you never had to force. And the moment I read that, the one-legged mystery cracked wide open. Ernest Jones didn't need two strong legs because he wasn't trying to power the ball with his legs. He was letting the weight of the club head do the work, swinging it like that knife on the handkerchief, and simply staying balanced enough on his one leg to let it swing. The club head had the power. He just had to not get in its way. Now here's where I felt the anger start, and I think you will too. I went looking for why this was buried, and the pattern was ugly and simple. There is very little money in telling a golfer the truth. The truth is short. Swing the club head, feel the weight, let it go. You can learn the feeling in an afternoon and practice it for free in your own hallway. But there is enormous money in the opposite. There is money in convincing you that your swing is a machine with 27 separate parts, and that every part needs adjusting, and that you can never possibly manage all of them on your own. There is money in the next lesson and the lesson after that. There is money in the training aid that straps to your arm, the sensor that clips to your glove, the app subscription that grades your positions frame by frame. There is money in keeping you a little bit broken, a little bit dependent, always one purchase away from the swing you want. A simple truth you can master for nothing is bad for business. A complicated problem you can rent solutions for forever is very, very good for business. And somewhere over the decades, the complicated version won, because the complicated version had an entire industry pushing it, and the simple version had one modest man with a wooden leg and a pocket knife. So that answered why it vanished. But it left me with the biggest question of all, the one that actually mattered for my own game. If the feeling is this simple, why is it so hard for regular golfers to get? Why can't you just walk out and swing the club head and stripe it? What exactly is the modern swing doing to us that blocks this feeling? And that's where the real mechanics come in. Let me show you what happens inside a bad swing, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. When you stand over a driver scared of the ball, your instinct is to hit at it. You see the ball down there, and your hands and arms tighten up and try to attack it, to deliver a blow right at that spot. Ernest Jones had a name for this. He called it the difference between swinging and hitting. Swinging is a continuous, flowing motion through the ball and out the other side. Hitting is a sudden, tense effort aimed at the ball itself. And here is the physics of why hitting wrecks you. The club head only travels a little over 8 inches wide, but the whole thing weighs a fraction of what your arms weigh. If you tense your big heavy arms and try to force them to move fast, the tiny club head at the end actually slows down. Tension is the enemy of speed. A tight muscle is a slow muscle. That's not opinion, that's how your body works. So the harder you try to hit the ball, the tenser you get, the slower the club head moves, and the more your hands take over and twist the face at the last instant. That's your slice. That's your hook. That's the leak to the right and the snap to the left. It is all the same disease. Your hands and arms grabbed control of a job that only the swinging weight of the club head should ever do. Now compare that to the knife on the handkerchief. You physically cannot force a weight on a piece of cloth to go faster by tensing up. The instant you tense, the cloth goes slack and the weight dies. The only way to make that weight move fast is to relax your hand, let it swing, and gently add speed to the swing that's already happening. Smoothness creates the speed. Effort kills it. And modern launch data backs this up in a way Ernest Jones never had the tools to measure but somehow already knew. When today's swing coaches finally started putting radar on golfers, they found that the players who hit the biggest, straightest drives were not the ones swinging the hardest. They were the ones with the least wasted tension, the smoothest sequence, and the most consistent contact right in the center of the face. Center contact alone can be worth an extra 20 to 30 yards over a strike off the heel or the toe, with no extra effort at all. Smooth center strikes. Exactly what a weight on a taut string produces. Exactly what a one-legged man in 1916 was doing. And that's exactly why I sat down and wrote all of this out myself, in plain language, for the man who's tired of renting the cure. Everything you're getting free in this video, the swinging feel, the tension that steals your speed, the setup that stops the leak right and the snap left, I took further in my own books than I could ever fit in one sitting, with the ball position rule the old masters wrote down, the spine tilt correction, the tempo ratio that beats swinging hard, and a 90-day system you can run on your living room carpet without a lesson or a new club. Over 316 pages of real content, written by me, for the golfer who wants to know why a thing works before he trusts it. If that's you, scan the QR code right there on your screen, grab the collection from the link in the description or the pinned comment. Now, back to the part that still had me stuck, because knowing why the simple version got buried didn't actually put a good drive in my hands. So the clue snapped into place. The modern habit of hitting at the ball is the thing blocking every one of us. We've been trained to attack, when we should be swinging. But knowing that and feeling it are two different worlds. And I still hadn't answered the question that would let you actually do this. How do you retrain a lifetime of hitting, without a coach, without a range, without spending a dime? That's where I almost gave up. And that's where the trail led somewhere I didn't expect. Straight into your own living room. Now I know what you might be thinking right about now. You're thinking this all sounds fine for someone with time and a big backyard and money for range balls. But you're a regular person with a regular life, and you don't have a net in the garage or a country club membership or hours to practice. Let me stop you right there, because this is the exact moment the whole thing turned for me. And it turned in the smallest, cheapest way possible. Ernest Jones taught most of his lessons indoors, in a small studio in New York City. No driving range, no radar, no fancy floor. He taught women who had never held a club, older players, injured players, people everyone else had written off, and he got them striping the ball in tight little rooms, because his whole method needed almost no space and no equipment at all. So here is the first thing you can do tonight, and it costs you nothing. Find a weight on a string. It can be exactly what he used, a small pocket knife tied to a handkerchief. It can be a key on a shoelace. It can be a heavy washer on a length of twine, or a fishing weight, or even a ring tied to a piece of dental floss. Anything with a little heft on the end of something flexible. Hold the loose end lightly between your thumb and first two fingers and let that weight hang down. Now swing it back and forth in front of you, side to side, like a slow pendulum. Watch the string. Your only goal is to keep that string tight the whole time, from one end of the swing to the other. To do that, you'll discover you have to be smooth. You have to let the weight lead. You cannot yank it or the string collapses. You feel in your fingers the exact moment the weight reaches the bottom of the arc and pulls hardest. That pull at the bottom is the feeling of speed arriving in the right place, right where the ball would be. Do that for 2 minutes, back and forth, keeping it taut, feeling where the weight loads up. You are teaching your hands the single most important sensation in golf, and you're doing it on your couch, in front of the television, for free. Here's the second thing, and it needs nothing but a club and a bit of floor. Take your driver and turn it upside down. Grip it down near the head, so you're holding the heavy end and swinging the light grip end through the air. Now make slow, lazy swings and listen. You'll hear a soft whoosh as the light end whips through. Your job is to make that whoosh happen as late as possible, out in front of you, down where the ball would sit, not behind you, and not up at the top. If you hear it early, back behind you, that means you threw all your effort away too soon by tensing up at the top. If you hear it late and low, out front, that means you stayed relaxed and let the speed build to the bottom, exactly like the weight on the string. 15 swings of that, listening for a late whoosh out front, retrains your body better than 100 stiff, anxious range balls, because it forces you to feel the swing instead of aiming a hit. And the third thing costs nothing but a change of thought. Stop looking at the ball like a target you have to strike. Start looking at a spot a few inches in front of the ball, toward your target, and make it your job to swing the club head through the ball to that spot. This one mental switch alone pulled me out of hitting and into swinging faster than anything else, because you cannot swing through to a point out front while also stabbing down at the ball. The brain won't let you do both. Pick the swing through, and the hitting instinct quietly dies. None of that needs a coach, none of it needs a range, none of it needs a single dollar. It needs a weight, a string, an upside-down club, and about 10 minutes a night in the room you're sitting in right now. But here's what I still hadn't nailed down. All of this teaches you the feeling. It fixes your rhythm and your contact. It stops the leak and the snap. Therefore your dispersion tightens and you start finding the center of the face. But it doesn't by itself explain the word in the title, striping. The high, towering, easy drive that seems to hang in the air forever and lands soft and long. For that last piece, I had to go back into Ernest Jones's own book, to a specific passage that ties the whole case together. And that passage is the tweak nobody talks about. Here is the finale, and I found it in the pages of his book from 1937, the one titled Around Swinging into Golf, where he lays out something he called the 2 points of the swing. Most people, when they finally relax and swing the club head, still make one quiet mistake. They think of the swing as a straight line, a back and a through, like chopping wood. Ernest Jones said no. The swing is not a line, it is an oval, a smooth loop, and the club head should feel like it's traveling on a gently rounded path that reaches its lowest point and then starts back up. And here is the tweak that makes the driver stripe. With a driver, and only with a driver, you want the club head to be catching the ball just after the bottom of that oval, on the way back up. Everything on the ground, your irons, you catch on the way down. But the driver, sitting up on a tee, you meet just as the club head has passed the bottom of its arc and begun to rise. Ernest Jones taught this with the weight on the string decades before anyone owned a radar. He'd show you where the weight bottomed out and started climbing, and he'd say, "That, right there, is where the driver meets the ball." Modern launch monitors proved him exactly right and put numbers on it. When you catch the driver slightly on the upswing, hitting up on the ball just a few degrees instead of chopping down on it, you launch the ball higher with less backspin. Higher launch and lower spin is the exact recipe for a ball that climbs, hangs, carries, and rolls. The testing showed it can add well over 20 yards of carry compared to hitting down on the same ball at the same speed. Same effort, same swing speed, 20 or 30 extra yards, purely from meeting the ball just after the bottom of the arc, on the rise. And here is how you set it up so it happens automatically, this weekend, with what you already own. Tee the ball higher than you think you should, so that half the ball sits above the crown of the driver when it's resting on the ground. Then put a little more weight on your back foot at address, and play the ball forward, off the inside of your lead heel. That's it. High tee, ball forward, a touch of weight back. Now when you simply swing the club head, the way you practiced with the weight on the string, the club naturally reaches the bottom of its arc behind the ball and is already climbing when it arrives at that high tee. You don't have to try to hit up. The setup does it for you, and the swinging does the rest. That was the moment every clue clicked together for me. A man loses his leg in 1916. He can't power the ball, so he's forced to discover the real secret, that the clubhead's own weight, swung smoothly, is where all the speed and all the accuracy live. He proves it by shooting in the 70s on one leg. He writes it down in 1937. He teaches it in a tiny New York room with a pocket knife and a handkerchief. And then an industry that makes its living from your confusion quietly lets it fade, because a golfer who knows this doesn't need to keep buying the cure. Swing the club head, not your body. Keep the string tight. Feel the weight load at the bottom. Tee it high, play it forward, and catch it on the rise. That is the weird tweak. It is 100 years old. It was never a secret because it was hard. It became a secret because it was too simple to sell. I tested it myself, in my own hallway with a key on a shoelace, then out on the course with a high tee and the ball played forward, and for the first time in years, I watched drive after drive leave the face on the same high, easy line, no leak, no snap, just that soft climbing flight I'd only ever seen from other people. It felt like getting something back that had been taken from me before I ever knew I owned it. And that's really what this whole thing is. Not a trick, a recovery. Somebody figured this out the hard way, on one leg, and wrote it down so it wouldn't die, and it almost died anyway, and now it's back in your hands. If you're the kind of person who wants the whole trail and not just the bumper sticker version, the kind who'd rather understand why a thing works than be sold the next gadget that promises it, then you already know why I chased this all the way back to a brittle book in a box nobody wanted. So let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer this one. When you try the weight on the string tonight, tell me the exact moment the string goes slack for you. Is it right at the top, or is it coming down into the bottom of the arc? That one detail tells me everything about where your tension is hiding, and I read these, so type it in the comments and I'll tell you what it means. Don't just watch and move on, leave the comment. This audience is quiet, and I'm asking you directly to speak up. And if you want to keep pulling these threads with me, the ones that got quietly buried because they were too cheap and too simple for anyone to profit from, then come along for the next one. Because I've got my hands on something even stranger now. An old note about how a putting stroke was taught using nothing but a coin balanced on the back of the hand. From a teacher who claimed it cured the yips in a single afternoon. I traced the name. I'm chasing it down, and when I've tested it, you'll be the first to hold it. Before you go, one more thing. Inside the Practical Wisdom Circle, I pick up right where this video stopped, walking you through the full drill so you feel it in your own hands. If something isn't clicking, ask me directly, and I answer you myself, not some machine. Folks like you are already in there with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel any time with one click. Come join me. Now that your driver is flying long and straight, let's fix your irons too. There's one simple little change that helps you take a clean, perfect divot every single time. That video's starting right here.